CBS Austin News begins with breaking news.
We are following several breaking stories all across Austin tonight.
On this Juneteenth holiday, it's been a busy day for Austin police. Here's what we're monitoring right now. In Northwest Austin, APD says 2 people were killed in a shooting in a neighborhood near the intersection of Spicewood Springs Road and North Capitol of Texas Highway. Over in East Austin, they also responded to a SWAT situation near Highway 183 and East MLK Jr. Boulevard. And in North Austin, 3 people were shot at Club Rodeo overnight. Our team coverage is all over the city now with these stories, starting with CBS Austin's Melanie Torrey live at the scene of that deadly shooting in Northwest Austin. Melanie, they believe one of the people killed may have been the shooter.
Preliminary information from police is that this is being investigated as a murder-suicide. Police say they received 911 calls in the neighborhood about reports of gunshots, and then in that red brick home just behind where those people are standing, they found one man dead in the backyard and another man dead inside the house. Austin Police say both men are about the same age, late 50s or early 60s. They did know each other, but police haven't said if they were related or whether one or both of them lived at the home. We've seen individuals, presumably family, come and go from the scene since this investigation began this afternoon, but right now this remains an active situation.
We have our homicide detectives currently on scene, as well as our victim services and crime scene personnel. It's going to be an active scene for the next few hours, and right now we don't have much information other than we don't believe that this is a threat to the public. We believe that this is an isolated incident between 2 individuals.
A third individual, a man older than the 2 deceased men, was placed in an ambulance that remained here for at least half an hour. He did not appear to have any serious injuries and has been visited by family arriving at the scene. Austin police say they will likely identify the 2 deceased men sometime tomorrow. Reporting live in Northwest Austin, Melanie Torrey, CBS Austin News.
Well, we continue our breaking news coverage in East Austin, now at the scene of another shooting. APD's SWAT team responded to an apartment complex off Technis Center Drive after a man pulled a gun and shot another man. CBS Austin's Ricardo Lewis has been there all afternoon. Ricardo, what have you learned about what happened there today?
Well, the scene is now clear, and APD SWAT was out here looking for that suspect for hours. It happened here at the Fort Branch at Truman's Landing apartment complex. Here's what we know so far. This happened around 11 this morning when police say 2 men got into an argument. During it, one of the men shot the other. Police say witnesses saw the suspect run to a nearby area afterwards. The SWAT team was called in to help with the search, but officers weren't able to find him. When police arrived, they found the victim with a gunshot wound. He went to the hospital for treatment and is expected to be okay.
This is believed to be an isolated incident, and the early indications from our detectives on scene is that it is not an ongoing threat to the community. But as always, we do ask everyone to be vigilant and aware of their surroundings.
During the SWAT call, neighbors were evacuated from the area as a precaution. Cap Metro had a bus on the scene to keep people out of the heat. Now, the suspect is still on the run, but police say that there is no threat to the public right now. Reporting live in East Austin, Ricardo Lewis, CBS Austin News.
Austin police hope you can help them solve an early morning shooting in North Austin that left 3 people seriously injured. This happened outside Club Rodeo, a popular Latin nightclub, and police are looking for any video or information connected to it. CBS Austin's Fred Cantu has that story.
The shooting happened in this parking lot of a shopping center on North Lamar near Runberg. The lot is empty right now, but a witness tells me at the time of the shooting, this parking lot was filled from end to end. Today, the area was roped off by police as investigators went through the process of collecting evidence. But a witness who didn't want to appear on camera tells us around 3 a.m. there was a group of maybe 20 men and women gathered in this lot when one of the men made an unwelcome move toward one of the women.
And all of a sudden, a big old fight started as I was walking by. All you hear is pow, 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 pow. By the time I turned around, he's laying down, 2 cars, and the truck was peeling off.
Police first told us 3 people were injured here, 1 seriously, but later updated that to all 3 being critically injured.
But it's so sad to see this just happening once a week. There's a shooting, just keep going on.
Brother Will says he prays while walking through the neighborhood every day, and now he's praying for the shooting victims.
And as I walk and pray and just pray that it get better.
and he's praying his neighborhood gets better too. Fred Cantu, CBS Austin News.
Happening now, Austin firefighters are at the scene of a natural gas line break near the Domain at the intersection of Burnett Road and Breaker Lane. Emergency officials urge drivers to avoid that area. They are expecting to see delays there over the next few hours. There's a lot going on this evening. Stay with us for the latest as we monitor these developing stories. We'll bring you the latest on air and at cbsaustin.com.
We could soon get a better idea of what happened during last month's deadly school shooting in Uvalde. Investigators are expected to release their preliminary report in the next 4 weeks. The Texas House Investigative Committee met again today to piece together what happened at Robb Elementary School. The Uvalde CISD police chief continues to face scrutiny on why it took officers more than an hour to enter the classroom where the gunman was barricaded. 19 children and 2 teachers were killed. Tonight, the Uvalde CISD School Board of Trustees will hold a school board meeting. We'll have a recap of that meeting tonight on CBS Austin News at 10.
CBS Austin News begins with breaking news.
Very alarming, just to, see something that close. Obviously, when I saw it, I knew something wasn't right. You don't see things that low.
Definitely a sight you do not see every day. A witness describing the scary moments when a small plane crashed into Lady Bird Lake this afternoon.
Austin Travis County EMS says it happened west of the I-35 bridge near Nash Hernandez Senior Road. Just after 2 this afternoon, one person on board went to the hospital with potentially serious injuries after being helped to shore by a paddleboarder.
CBS Austin's Melanie Torrey joins us live downtown now. Melanie, you've learned this was a Texas Parks and Wildlife plane.
Hema, Texas Parks and Wildlife tells us that pilot was taking the plane on a test flight when he reported a maintenance issue. Shortly after that, the plane made a crash landing here in Lady Bird Lake. Right now, there are still a lot of first responders on scene. We have police, fire, EMS, DPS, Texas Parks and Wildlife. You can still see the plane out there in Lady Bird Lake. It's surrounded by that floating perimeter, and then a tiny piece of the wing is poking up out of the water. This happened just after 2 o'clock this afternoon. The pilot was taken to the hospital by ambulance. He was the only person on board, and thankfully no one else was injured. Moments before the crash, people in nearby high-rises on Rainey Street saw the low-flying plane and then heard the crash.
Scary moments this evening as a possible tornado tears through North Bryan. A lot of people were out on the road. It happened just around 4:45 this afternoon. We'll show you some of the damage it left behind. But first, let's check in with Chief Meteorologist Shel Winkley. And Shel, we knew storms were coming. We'd followed what you said. And then this happened. Why did this form? What happened?
Well, you said possible tornado, so we don't have a confirmation from the Weather Service. All likelihood, and I'll show you why in just a bit, that we know this is a tornado, is because of the debris that came with it. But now we have to figure out why it happened and where it touched down and the damage that it left. And here's the thing, on any given day, Carla, this is a shower. It started at Wellborn around 4:15 and then moved up to the north. No lightning with it, not even that much of heavy rain. But what happened is we had an old outflow boundary from the activity that moved through this morning, and it caught that shower and spun it up. So this is a look at that storm as it passed by at 4:15 when it produced that very brief tornado. It was only about maybe 18,000 feet tall, a very short shower. And again, not even classified as a thunderstorm, but again, that brief little spin up produced what looked like a significant tornado. In fact, I want to show you some of the video because the other question we've had here is, was it a tornado? Was it a funnel cloud? How do you know? And if you watch closely, this is one of the pictures that were sent in, and right there you can see some of that debris flying through the air. So that tells us, even though this was very low to the ground and we had obstruction there, that it is on the ground, and we will show you some of that damage that shows you that it was a tornado. National Weather Service is due into town tomorrow. It'll tell us the strength of it, likely because of the damage that we had in a few locations, and it'll tell us the exact start point and the exact ending point, which again, wasn't very long. This was not on the ground long, but you can tell it did plenty of damage, and it struck a portion of town where there were definitely some structures. Luckily, we have not heard of any injuries here this evening. So that is the good news, if you have any out of this situation. Let me show you pinpoint radar here for tonight. This is what we're dealing with as of this hour. Still have a flood advisory, meaning some light flooding and some minor flooding is occurring across portions of Brazos County, including Bryan and College Station, northwest Grimes County, and Madison County. It goes until 12:15. This is the last band of rain and storms moving through the area that will be the end of all of this, and it's not severe, but it could be producing some very heavy rainfall still and some pea-sized hail. Also have a flood advisory in place for Leon and Robertson County. That will continue for another hour and a half, set to expire with some of the minor flooding on roads there until 11:30. We'll take another look at this, plus we have many of our creeks and rivers now moving to flood stage because of all the rain that fell today. We'll get you those details in just a few minutes.
Thank you, Shell. Madisonville also hit by the storms today, and meteorologist Erica Page is joining us live in Madison right now. And Erica, how are those streets looking tonight?
Well, you know, we've been through Madisonville, and we kind of had to track back here to the area. What we kind of started our day as is we left the station at 2:30 this afternoon, and we were following that storm that was moving through Bryan and College Station, and we actually saw some of that rotation as that storm was making its way closer to the area. And then in our efforts to kind of stay ahead of this storm throughout the day, we got caught in a lot of that rain and kind of caught behind it thanks to just a lot of the rain and the kind of just some of those flooded roadways that we were running into, especially across North Zulch. That was kind of the area that we really noticed some of those flooded roadways, and especially Highway 21 and the 39 overpass. That's where the police officers had the road blocked off. They were diverting traffic, and our goal was to kind of continue to stay ahead of these storms, especially as we continued down I-45 throughout the afternoon and into the evening hours.
And many of you have sent us pictures and video of the storm moving through the area this evening. I want to show you some of those. First of all, we're going to start outside with, I was told this is from a viewpoint from Grimes County in Iola, specifically looking toward that direction of 1179 and Coyote Run Road. I apologize for that delay. Now we're going to bring it inside more. We've got our friends at BCS Toyota. This is in their parking lot today, this evening, and this one will show you more of the dark clouds and of course that funnel looking thing that again we are still waiting to confirm to make sure that was a tornado. And then this is one that many of you have seen on social media as well. We've got, this is from the Galleria Village here on 29th Street, just down the road in Briarcrest Drive. If you notice, this is the building, and this is looking outside the window. And again, that funnel looking cloud off in the distance and closer to the center of where all that activity happened, where McKenna just took us a moment ago. This is, I believe it is Epicure's Catering. We have been in touch with them. We're trying to get some information about their rebuilding efforts. This is their catering facility out there off of FM 1179 near Coyote Run Road. And we're going to have that information on their rebuilding efforts coming up a little bit later.
This is just the beginning of, you know, the pro-life generation, you know, being there for women, for the unborn.
Welcome to an America that will welcome every child! Woo!
Demonstrators against abortion rights erupt in cheers after the U.S. Supreme Court overturns Roe v. Wade.
This decision is illegitimate. Abortion bans are illegitimate. Forced motherhood is illegitimate. This must not stand.
And it's clear that these justices don't care about the majority of Americans and their voices.
Supporters of abortion rights outraged with the Supreme Court's decision. A look at the impact today's historic ruling will have on abortions in Texas and across the country. Roe v. Wade is no more after the Supreme Court overturns the landmark decision that stood for nearly 50 years. Protests are underway right now in downtown Austin. This is a live shot, and across the country in response to the historic decision from justices. Today's ruling means abortions are no longer a constitutional right. In a 6-3 ruling, the conservative majority court sides with the state of Mississippi and its supporters in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization. Mississippi officials asked the highest court to eliminate the constitutional right to abortion first established in 1973. The court reversed the decision of the 5th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, which blocked the measure. Now the issue of abortion rights returns to the states. Coming up in a few minutes, we'll break down the ripple effects of today's ruling for abortions in Texas.
Like I said, I just got mixed feelings about it. I don't know.
For people who haven't made up their minds on the abortion issue yet, today's announcement comes from the U.S. Supreme Court and has them now wondering how this ruling will impact them and their families. CBS Austin's Fred Cantu traveled to Georgetown to get some perspective from outside of Austin.
On a hot day like today, why not enjoy a hot game of youth baseball? And while the kids are busy with that, I'm going to talk to some of the parents about the hot topic of the day. There's something relaxing about watching kids be kids. But these girls will soon be young women facing tough decisions. And some of their parents here in Williamson County believe the Supreme Court is making the right call to help women and the country.
And I'm so proud of that decision. Hopefully God can heal our land now that reason has come back to the Supreme Court.
I think it's great. That's one of the reasons that we left California in the first place, because we didn't want our children to grow up with that.
But not all parents are on board.
It bothers me. It makes me sad. I am not a pro-abortion person, but I am a pro-choice person. I think that women should have the right to make a decision. Nobody knows the circumstances behind it and why.
James Galbraith is worried about his adult daughters.
What are they going to do if they find themselves in a situation that's already unpleasant, and now you've made it far more unpleasant, in my opinion?
He worries about the finality of a law that bans access to abortions with no exceptions.
Abortion's not just taking a life that's a viable life and somebody doesn't want it. There's many reasons why people have to get them, and now they just super complicated it.
Abortion has been legal in the U.S. for almost 50 years. That's given people plenty of time to make up their minds on this issue. But for some, it's still an extremely tough call.
I just got mixed feelings about it. I don't know. I'm a woman, so I feel for the people who want it, and I feel for the people who don't. It's just, to me, it's a personal preference, I feel.
In Georgetown, Fred Cantu, CBS Austin News.
We're hearing from state leaders tonight about the reversal of Roe v. Wade. Governor Greg Abbott agrees with the Supreme Court's decision, adding that Texas is a pro-life state, and they will always fight to save every child from the ravages of abortion. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton says SCOTUS ended one of the most morally and legally corrupt eras in U.S. history. He also says he'll make today an annual holiday to honor the 70 million lives lost to abortion. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick called today's decision, quote, a very historic day and a giant win for life. Tragic. That's how Austin Mayor Steve Adler describes today's Supreme Court decision overturning Roe v. Wade. Adler and other local leaders are vowing to take action to restore legal abortion access.
I anticipate that before the month's out, the City Council will take further action under the Grace resolution being put forward by Councilmember Bella and Fuentes and Ellis and Tobo and myself to make sure that the city resources from a criminal prosecution standpoint are being spent on the priorities that we have in this community.
Travis County District Attorney Jose Garza says he will not prosecute women seeking abortions and other life-saving medical care. New polling from Quinnipiac University shows that a majority of registered voters disagree with today's ruling from the Supreme Court. Voters support the 1973 decision that established a woman's right to an abortion by nearly a 2-to-1 margin. 29% say abortion should be legal in all cases, and 31% say it should be legal in most cases. 34% say it should be illegal in most cases.
To protect our staff and to protect our patients from the hostile elected officials in Texas, we have ceased providing abortion care today.
Abortion stopped across Texas. The state's top providers saying it's a decision they must make as they sort out the legal impacts of the Supreme Court's ruling. CBS Austin's Melanie Torrey joins us live tonight. Melanie, at this point, it's not clear if these clinics will provide abortions in Texas ever again.
Walt, when asked that question today, they didn't have an answer yet as their attorneys continue processing the details of this ruling. These clinics are up against trigger laws set to take effect in the state of Texas soon, but also a state law that's still on the books criminalizing abortion 50 years ago.
As a person who has had an abortion, it is unfathomable that yesterday each of us had the right to legal abortion, and today we have woken up with less bodily autonomy and freedom than we went to sleep last night.
Despite a pause in services, healthcare providers and advocates for abortion access are speaking out.
I'm horrified by what this says about how this country views and treats women, pregnant people, and families.
Amy Hagstrom Miller of Whole Woman's Health says the Supreme Court's ruling is already impacting lives.
Today, we had to call hundreds of our patients in Texas and cancel their appointments.
Their other clinics in Virginia, Maryland, and Minnesota remain open and able to provide abortion care.
Abortion has been restricted even further today in the state of Texas Texas has both a criminal abortion ban that predates Roe and also a trigger ban.
It's a legal question impacting Planned Parenthood clinics in Texas, too.
This is exactly why we have chosen to pause abortion care so that people who are attorneys, which I am not, to look at this very carefully and how this interacts with those existing, and in this case of the pre-Roe ban, very old laws.
And these clinics say they hope to have a better understanding of what they can do legally in the days ahead. Planned Parenthood says their Texas clinics do remain open for family planning, contraceptives, and for health screenings, just not abortion. Reporting live in North Austin, Melanie Torrey, CBS Austin News.
With the Supreme Court issuing its decision overturning Roe v. Wade, many states have trigger bans or laws that will soon kick into place. Texas right now is among 13 states that have passed laws making the procedure legal within 30 days of the judgment being issued. House Bill 1280 bans nearly all abortions. 7 more states are likely to ban abortions within weeks or months. CBS Austin's Adele Uchida breaks it all down.
A leak of a draft opinion earlier this year showed the court leaning toward upholding Dobbs in Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health, which would overturn Roe v. Wade, the 50-year precedent on legal abortion. Today, Roe was overturned.
Having read the Dobbs opinion, pro-choice forces are trying to come up with other arguments to support a constitutional right to abortion.
Seth Chandler is a foundation professor of law at the University of Houston Law Center. Meantime, the Texas law that bans abortion at 6 weeks is still in front of a court and is different.
There are still problems with SB 8, and notably it's saying that basically anyone on earth can sue the doctor performing the abortion.
In real life, though, abortion will be banned in multiple states, Texas among them.
House Bill 1280, the Human Life Protection Act, was one of our top legislative priorities in the 87th legislative session. And what that law does is it sets in the books that when the Supreme Court scales back or overturns Roe v. Wade, that law is triggered, and 30 days after the final judgment is rendered, life is protected in Texas to that point.
Amy O'Donnell is the communications director for Texas Alliance for Life. But Professor Chandler says that's not the only law on the books.
The old Roe versus Wade law is still on the books. And so some aggressive prosecutor might not want to wait the full 30 days to go try to prosecute someone for performing an abortion.
Meantime, Progress Texas says pro-choice advocates need to vote that way in November.
It's time to turn this anger into action by voting for candidates who unapologetically support our right to have access to abortion.
Reporting in Austin, Adele Uchida, CBS Austin News.
We have to make things right. We need to get down to the bottom of everything that has happened and find out the truth.
Families of the Uvalde shooting victims demand answers for those 21 lives taken from them just last month. And into our newsroom just moments ago, we have learned the school district has placed Uvalde CISD Police Chief Pete Arredondo on administrative leave, effective immediately. Arredondo has been heavily criticized for his response plan during the deadly shooting. Matt Roy has the story.
From law enforcement officials to legislators to families of victims and the community, an increasingly common thread is the word failure, with everyone becoming more and more frustrated by not knowing what happened on May 24th.
It's all dropping. It's been lies after lies to us. The community's been lied to and lied to.
We're trying to speak for our children, our grandchildren. They're no longer here to speak, and the things that are coming out is just making it harder and harder every single day.
This, the reaction to the findings revealed by DPS Director Steve McCraw on Tuesday in a 5-hour testimony. To Berlinda Areola, the grandmother of young Amarillo Garza, the blame is on UCISD Chief Pete Arredondo.
They listened to what he said, and because they listened to what he said, our grandkids are no longer here with us, and our teachers are no longer here with us because of that.
UCISD parent of 4, Michael Brown, says it's time for Arredondo to go.
I just don't feel we can trust him for Uvalde's children to keep them safe next year.
It was that tragic. It was an abject failure.
37-year police veteran Danny Garcia says this sets law enforcement back years.
Yes, this is going to hurt law enforcement for a long time. But the fact is that sometimes, I guess, tragically and horribly, sometimes we need a wake-up call.
But Senator Roland Gutierrez, who was in the room for McCraw's testimony on Tuesday, says there are now more questions than answers.
All I do know is that a lot of people failed these children, and to put it all on the local school cop, that just doesn't pass muster with me.
DPS has already done nearly 700 interviews in their investigation, but Gutierrez says it's time someone looks in the mirror.
We've got to start investigating the investigators.
Everybody in this community wants answers, and they say with every piece of information that comes out, only one thing becomes more and more clear, that law enforcement failed these 21 lives. Reporting in Uvalde, I'm Matt Roy.
More on State Senator Roland Gutierrez, who represents the Uvalde area, is suing Texas DPS now. He claims the agency denied him access to public records related to the Robb Elementary shooting. The lawsuit says DPS officials have failed to respond to the senator's open records request filed on May 31st. State law says they have 10 business days to respond, but Gutierrez says he's heard nothing back. DPS hasn't yet responded to the suit.
Texas state lawmakers heard testimony from mental health professionals about potential change following the deadly Uvalde shooting.
The speakers touched on the need to expand services. CBS Austin's Jessica Taylor joins us live in the studio today. Jessica, many of the speakers share the current workforce is just a big hurdle.
Yes, some of the professionals told lawmakers that if they can't hire people like counselors or social workers to run programs, then they can't provide the services they're expecting. And during the hours of testimony today, recommendations were provided and ranged from creating uniformity across the state for school-based programs to managing caseloads for workers and speaking with states like Florida and Connecticut to hear about their services offered after mass shootings. Now, another area several speakers touched on was strengthening the workforce.
We know there's a large shortage of psychiatrists in our state. One estimate is that we have a shortage of about 1,000 psychiatrists. That's one estimate there. And we know that many of these families are seeking mental health care from people like me, the primary care provider.
Now, that doctor shared an experience of using the Psychiatry Access Network to help a father find treatment for his son who is experiencing a crisis, and she hopes to see lawmakers support more family-child interventions. And speakers also touched on the need for more inpatient beds to treat more people and increasing services for partial hospitalization programs that allow children to go to daily intervention services while continuing school. Live in studio, Jessica Taylor, CBS Austin News.
Officials with the Texas Police Chiefs Association are suggesting the state mandate more active shooter training for law enforcement and consider more preventive measures to head off future mass shootings. But the group has a credibility problem after police were blamed for botching the response to Uvalde school shooting. CBS Austin's Fred Cantu shows us how police leaders are responding to the criticism.
The Texas Police Chiefs Association was invited to the state Senate to offer their expertise or make suggestions, but they decided it might be a good idea to first address the elephant in the room.
I have yet to hear one person testify and say, "I'm sorry." And I'll start by saying I'm sorry to those parents who have lost the unimaginable, to those spouses. Jimmy and I would submit to you that our profession failed on this day.
What happened in Uvalde is not acceptable behavior in the eyes of the law enforcement community in the state of Texas. That is not what we've trained for.
Chief Jimmy Perdue from North Texas says his members expected the officers in Uvalde to rush in to stop the shooter, and he says his own wife would have expected him to do the same.
And she told me very clearly, she goes, "You know, I love you to death, but I would have expected you to go in that door because that is what you're supposed to do." And that is what the commitment of 99.9% of the police officers in the state of Texas, I believe, have.
San Marcos Police Chief Stan Standridge's resume includes nearly 2 decades as an active shooter response instructor, so you would expect him to recommend more tactical training. And he did. But the chiefs are also open to legislative solutions.
I believe that there are reasonable measures that can be put into place that do not infringe upon the Second Amendment, of which I am a strong advocate for.
And a red flag law might be problematic for Texas lawmakers, but the chief says it could help.
If we can get together and find some operational measures to solve all those issues, conceptually, I think that there's good things about those things, given certain criteria.
It could take time to work out the details, but unless Governor Greg Abbott calls them back for a special session, the next session of the state legislature doesn't begin until January. Fred Cantu, CBS Austin News.
For continuing coverage on the Uvalde tragedy, visit our website, cbsaustin.com.